how do we make sure that even the most powerful governments have to follow the rules? That they can't just do, well, whatever they want? It's one of the biggest questions in political science, and the answer, it lies in this really powerful idea called constitutionalism. It's basically the concept that defines the rules for the rulers, and we're going to unpack exactly what that means. So here's our game plan for this explainer. We're going to start with the basics, what constitutionalism actually is. Then we'll look at its key features, dive into essential challenge it faces, and clarify a really, really important distinction. And finally, we'll see why this whole concept is absolutely vital for any democracy.
All right, let's get right to it. At its very heart, constitutionalism is all about solving one fundamental problem. How do you put real, enforceable limits on government power?
And this gets to a super crucial point. Constitutionalism isn't the physical document you can hold in your hand. It's the underlying philosophy. It's the core belief that a government's authority actually comes from us, the people. And because of that, it has to be restricted by a set of rules. It's kind of built on this idea of a social contract, where we agree to be governed, but, and this is a big but, only if the government agrees to play by the rules that are laid out in a constitution.
This quote just nails it perfectly. It's such a simple but totally revolutionary idea. The state is not free to do whatever it wants. Its power is not absolute. It has boundaries, and those boundaries are set by law. Now, this whole idea didn't just appear out of thin air. Nope, it evolved over centuries. It really kicks off way back in 1215 with the Magna Carta, when nobles forced King John to admit that even he wasn't above the law. Then it picks up steam with the English Bill of Rights, which put even more limits on the monarch. And it all kind of culminates in documents like the U.S. Constitution, which was designed from the ground up with this principle of limited government at its very core. Okay, so how does this philosophy actually work in the real world? Well, it relies on a few essential building blocks.
So what are the actual mechanisms that make this whole thing work? First, all power has to come from the people. That's popular sovereignty. Second, and this is a big one, the government is bound by the Constitution, not by its own agenda or whatever's politically convenient at the moment. Third, you can't just change the limits on government whenever you feel like it. You have to go through the process of amending the Constitution itself, which is usually designed to be pretty difficult. And finally, to make sure no one person or group gets too powerful, you divide that power up among different branches, which can then check and balance each other out. This brings us to a huge debate in all of this. Should a constitution be rigid and super hard to change, or should it be flexible and easy to adapt?
And this is a serious trade-off. On one hand, you have a rigid constitution. Think of it like a stone fortress. It provides stability, it protects our most fundamental rights from the whims of a temporary majority, and it keeps the rules of the game consistent. But, on the other hand, a flexible constitution is more like a living tree. It lets a country adapt to new challenges, to social changes, preventing it from being trapped by the past. You really need the strength of the fortress, but you also need the adaptability of the tree. The US Constitution, for example, is famously rigid, while the UK's unwritten constitution is way more flexible.
But there's a real danger if you make a constitution too rigid. If the rules become so difficult to change that they feel like an iron cage, it can lead to massive frustration. And then you get political leaders who might be tempted to just ignore the rules, attack the courts that enforce them, or even try to throw the whole system out.
Okay, this next point is absolutely critical, especially if you're studying this stuff for an exam or just really want to get it. It's the difference between the document and the idea behind that document. So here's the key takeaway. A constitution is the document. It's the physical rule book that outlines how a state is organized and what its laws are. But constitutionalism, that's the culture, the ideology, the widespread belief that the government must be bound by that rule book. You see, a country can have a beautifully written constitution on paper, but if its leaders just ignore it and abuse their power, then what you have is a constitution without constitutionalism.
So we have covered all the theory, but let's bring this all back to why it is so profoundly important in our actual lives.
So, what's the bottom line? Constitutionalism is the line in the sand between a government that serves its people and one that oppresses them. It's the framework that makes power legitimate, not just arbitrary. It's our main shield against corruption and, really, the ultimate protector of our freedoms. Because without it, there are no guaranteed rules for the rulers. And that leaves us with this final, lingering question. When do the needs of today clash with the rules of yesterday? When should the fundamental rules of the game be allowed to change? There's no easy answer here, and it's a challenge that every single constitutional democracy is constantly grappling with.